Hello, my name is Pamela Moore, senior flight attendant with Sky Nordic Airways. After 12 years of flying, I've learned how to sleep through turbulence, read the faces of nervous passengers, and spot when something's off before anyone says a word. But nothing in my years of flying prepared me for what happened in Reykjavik that winter morning. We landed late the previous night after a grueling 10-hour haul from Toronto. The northern lights flickered faintly above the airport as we taxied to the gate, but the beauty of it didn't land with us. Everyone was too tired. Our layover was just under 20 hours, long enough to rest, grab breakfast, and maybe take a short walk before the next rotation. I remember looking out at the frozen runway, the lights blurring into a thin green haze. The air looked thicker somehow, like the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. The hotel shuttle was waiting for us outside the terminal. Our small crew, Captain Eric, First Officer Johan, and attendants Lena, Marisol, and I, climbed aboard in silence. The driver didn't say much, just nodded when I greeted him. His eyes lingered on us a second longer than felt comfortable, as if he recognized something we didn't. I chalked it up to exhaustion. Reykjavik at night feels like a place between worlds. The streets were slick with ice, no sound but the hum of the bus. I watched our reflection in the window as we passed shuttered shops and empty cafes. At one red light, I saw the faint glow of something pulsing in the fog above the harbor. By the time I blinked, it was gone. We reached the hotel around midnight. A tall modern building sits quietly at the edge of town. The lobby was warm but eerily empty. The front desk clerk barely looked up as he handed us our keys. He spoke softly, in a tone that felt rehearsed, like he'd already said these exact words to us before. I didn't think much of it until later. My room was on the 5th floor facing the bay. The heater clicked loudly every few seconds, and a thin layer of frost had formed inside the window frame. I stood there for a while, looking out at the distant lights of fishing boats. The clock on the bedside table blinked 12:47 a.m., and my body felt 20 pounds heavier. I set the alarm for 6 and collapsed without even unpacking. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind that feels peaceful, but the kind that presses on your eardrums, where even your breathing sounds wrong. I checked my watch, 6:01 a.m. For some reason, it had stopped ticking for a second before jumping forward again. I tapped it, assuming the cold had slowed the mechanism. Marisol called to confirm our 7 a.m. departure for the airport shuttle. We agreed to meet in the lobby at 1:45. Her voice sounded distant on the line, faintly distorted, like she was calling from another room through a wall of static. When I hung up, I noticed something odd. The air in the room felt warmer than before, but the window still carried that same thin layer of frost. I showered, dressed, and gathered my things. When I opened the door, I thought I saw a flicker of movement at the far end of the hallway, someone turning the corner just as I stepped out. I remember thinking it must have been Lena. She was always punctual. But when I reached the elevator, the light above the down arrow was already glowing, and the doors opened the instant I pressed the button, as if it had been waiting for me. In the lobby, Captain Eric sat near the fireplace, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and gave me a tired smile. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Like a rock," I lied. Lena and Marisol joined us moments later, chatting about breakfast options. Johan trailed behind, yawning, muttering something about the sun never properly rising here. It was true. The light outside was dim, bluish-gray, like a world stuck between night and morning. The snow on the sidewalk glowed faintly, and the street lamps hadn't turned off yet. The clock behind the reception desk read 6:58 a.m. We checked out, thanked the clerk, and stepped into the cold. The air bit hard at our faces, and our breath came out like smoke. The van was already idling outside. I looked back through the glass doors and saw the receptionist watching us go, still and expressionless. His face reflected the light of the lobby clock. Its red digital numbers seemed unnaturally bright. The ride to the airport should have taken 10 minutes, but something about that morning dragged. The streets were empty, no cars, no pedestrians. Reykjavik usually wakes early, but that day it felt deserted. The driver said nothing the entire way. I watched the sun barely breaking over the horizon, a dull orange disk hovering behind a veil of fog. At one point, Lena pointed at her wristwatch and frowned. "That's weird," she said. Mine stopped. I checked mine. The second hand was frozen at 7:14 a.m. Everyone pulled up their phones. Same time, 7:14. The seconds wouldn't move. Captain Eric chuckled nervously, tapping the screen. "Must be the cold," he said, but his voice trembled. By the time we reached the terminal, the driver finally spoke. "You're late," he said in a flat tone. Eric frowned. "What do you mean, late?" "It's barely past 7. The man turned around slowly, eyes pale and unreadable. "It's after 10. We all laughed at first, one of those tired, dismissive laughs you give when something doesn't make sense and you don't want to think about it. But when we stepped into the terminal, the clocks all showed 10:07 a.m. The sunlight outside had changed. It wasn't early morning anymore. It was a full day, and yet in my head, in my body, it still felt like 7. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong with time itself. Marisol touched my arm and whispered, "Pamela, do you remember actually getting in the van?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. The memory slipped away like water through my fingers. The last clear thing I remembered was standing in the hotel lobby, hearing the faint click of the clock behind the desk. At exactly 7:14 a.m., and then nothing. When we got back to the hotel later that afternoon, we were all quiet. No one could quite explain what had happened that morning, but the mood was off, like everyone was pretending it hadn't been as strange as it really was. The flight wasn't until the next evening, so we had the rest of the day to rest. Still, something about that lost time kept nagging at me. After checking back in, I went up to my room. My phone had automatically reconnected to the hotel Wi-Fi, and I noticed the timestamp of my last outgoing message, 7:03 a.m. That made sense. But then I scrolled up. There was a photo in my gallery, one I didn't remember taking, stamped 0742. It showed the hotel lobby, the front doors, and the 5 of us, standing perfectly still with our suitcases beside us, staring straight ahead. It was blurry and dark, but there was no mistaking it. I felt a chill move down my spine. I knocked on Lena's door and showed her the picture. She went pale. "I don't remember this," she said quietly. "We didn't just stand there like that." I told her maybe it was an accidental burst shot or a glitch. She didn't answer. Her watch was still frozen at 7:14, the second hand caught between ticks. We went downstairs together to find Captain Eric. He was sitting in the lounge with Johan and Marisol, nursing coffee. I told them about the picture. No one laughed this time. Eric frowned and pulled out his phone. "My flight app says our checkout time was recorded at 10:03, he said. "The front desk mentioned it too. They said we were in the lobby at 7, but didn't leave until almost 3 hours later." "That's impossible," Johan said. "We were in the van at 7 sharp, Eric shrugged. "That's what I thought." He waved over the clerk, a middle-aged man named Christian with tired eyes and a tone that carried no humor. He brought up the record on his computer and turned the screen toward us. There it was, 5 digital entries, all time-stamped 10:03 a.m. He even showed us the security log for the automatic doors. "They opened at 10:01, not before. Maybe your watches were off," he said. "All 5? Lena asked. He looked uneasy. "It happens. The weather sometimes interferes with electronics, but there was something in his expression that told me he didn't believe his own words." Back upstairs, Marisol suggested we check the security footage ourselves. Eric, who always liked being in control, agreed. After some convincing, the front desk manager allowed us to watch the footage from that morning. The grainy black and white feed showed the lobby at 6:59 a.m. We appeared, one by one, in uniform and ready, chatting and laughing like normal. Then right at 7:10, everything seemed to slow. The movement became strange, jerky, and inconsistent. Johan's hand hovered mid-air longer than it should have, and when the clock hit 7:14, every one of us just stopped. The 5 of us stood completely still for maybe 30 seconds, eyes fixed on the front doors. Then the footage flickered, distorted, and when it returned, the timestamp jumped forward to 10:03 a.m. The doors opened, and we walked out as if nothing had happened. Marisol gasped. No, that's not real." "That's edited." Christian shook his head slowly. "This is direct from the system. We can't edit timestamps." Eric rubbed his face, looking suddenly much older. "So what, 3 hours just vanished? We stood there the whole time?" No one answered. That night, none of us could sleep. Lena came knocking at 1 in the morning. She looked shaken, pale, her hands trembling slightly. "It happened again," she said. My phone froze at 7:14. Even though it's 1 a.m., The time just blinked to 7:14 and stayed there for a full minute before catching up. I checked mine and it was fine, but her fear was contagious. We sat on her bed, whispering like kids at a sleepover after a bad dream. I tried to joke about Reykjavik being stuck in a time warp, but she didn't smile. She kept rubbing her wrist. That's when I saw it, a faint red circle, like a burn mark. It looked fresh, the skin slightly raised. "What's that?" I asked. "I don't know. It started this evening. It's warm to the touch." We both went silent. Then, as if on cue, the heater in her room made a sharp clicking sound and stopped. The air felt thick again. I heard the faintest hum, low, steady, vibrating through the walls. It reminded me of the sound the plane makes when it's just about to power up, that deep mechanical resonance before the engines start. Lena and I just stared at each other. Then the hum stopped. The next morning, the whole crew met in the lobby again. Everyone looked exhausted. Johan said he'd woken up exactly at 7:14 without an alarm. Eric mentioned his watch had started ticking again sometime after midnight, but was now 3 hours fast. Marisol had dreamed that she was standing outside the hotel, but the sky was glowing white instead of blue, and there was no sound, not even wind. We didn't talk much after that. Each of us was thinking the same thing but afraid to say it out. Loud, something had happened during those missing hours and somehow it wasn't over yet. When the shuttle arrived to take us to the airport for our flight back, we all hesitated before stepping in. The driver was different this time, a young woman with kind eyes. She smiled and said, "You're early." Eric frowned. "Early?" "Yes," she said. "Your pickup was at 10. We exchanged glances. None of us dared look at our watches. Lena whispered, "Please tell me yours says 7:14. I didn't have to check. I already knew it did. That night on the return flight, the air in the cabin felt off from the moment we boarded. It wasn't turbulence or mechanical noise. It was heavier than that, a pressure you could feel under your skin. I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion. Still, something about the lighting, the silence between engine hums, made me uneasy. We'd all agreed not to talk about Reykjavik anymore, but it hung between us like fog. Every one of us felt it, even if no one said so. As soon as we reached cruising altitude, Captain Eric called me to the flight deck. His face looked drawn, pale under the glow of the instruments. He didn't even look at me when he said, "Pamela, check your watch." I did. It was frozen again. 7:14 a.m. He nodded slowly. "Mine too. Johann's as well. We didn't notice until after takeoff." He pointed to the cockpit clock, which was stuck on the same time. "It's not possible. We reset this before pushback." For a long moment, the only sound was static from the radio. I thought I heard faint voices through it, fragmented syllables, as if someone was trying to speak but couldn't form words. I leaned closer to the receiver, but Eric snapped, "Don't!" His voice was sharper than usual. Back in the cabin, passengers were quiet. Too quiet. Most had fallen asleep early, but a few were awake, staring blankly out the windows as if watching something only they could see. I passed one man near row 32 who was whispering, "It's not moving," over and over, his eyes fixed on the clouds. When I looked out, I saw what he meant. The clouds below us were perfectly still, frozen in formation, not shifting even slightly despite the speed. It was as if the plane were suspended in a photograph. The engines roared normally, the lights flickered as usual, but the outside world had stopped. I went to the galley to find Lena and Marisol. They were standing by the coffee machine, whispering. Lena rolled up her sleeve to show me her wrist again. The red circle had deepened in color, almost glowing faintly beneath her skin. Marisol had one too, identical in size and shape. "It burns sometimes," Marisol said quietly. "Like a pulse." I didn't say anything. I just stared. Then Johan appeared from the flight deck, looking pale. "The instruments keep resetting," he said. "Altitude, time, everything jumps backward. Every time it hits 7:14, it starts over." "Could it be a system error?" I asked. "Then why is it happening to our watches too?" The cabin lights flickered, and for a split second, everything went dark. When they came back, a few passengers screamed, and someone swore they'd seen a shadow move through the aisle. We checked, of course. Nothing there. But Lena's tray cart had shifted several feet, as if pushed. I tried to stay calm, to act like everything was under control. That's what we do, keep the illusion of safety no matter what's happening behind the scenes. But inside, I was shaking. Every few minutes, the hum of the engines would dip into silence for half a breath, then surge again. I could feel the change in air pressure each time, like the plane was dipping in and out of something unseen. At one point, I glanced at the galley mirror and froze. My reflection was wrong. It was a fraction of a second delayed, mimicking my movement just slightly too late. I blinked and stepped closer. The woman in the reflection blinked back, but not at the same time. I remember whispering, "Please stop," before I even realized I'd said it aloud. That's when Lena called from behind me. "Pamela, come here. You need to see this." She was pointing at the crew manifest printout. Somehow it had reprinted itself from the onboard system, showing a timestamp of 07.14, but that wasn't what caught my attention. Beneath our 5 names, there was a 6th entry, blank where the name should have been, but marked as checked in. Johan stared at it. "There's no one else on duty." "I know," I said. The printer whirred again, spitting out another sheet. Same thing, a blank 6th crew member, checked in. For a few seconds, no one said a word. The hum of the plane felt louder now, like it was inside my skull. I could hear a faint beeping somewhere, like a medical monitor, repeating steadily at the same rhythm as the burn in Lena's wrist. Then the interphone rang. 3 short chimes. I answered, expecting the cockpit, but there was only static. Not white noise, not background hum. It was rhythmic, pulsing, almost like breathing. "Captain?" I said into the line. No answer. Then faintly I heard it, my own voice, whispering. "Pamela, don't go outside." I dropped the receiver. Eric stormed out of the cockpit moments later, his face ashen. "We lost all external comms," he said. "Even the backup frequency's dead. And radar's looping. We're over the same coordinates again and again." Marisol whispered, "Like we're stuck." He didn't answer, just went back to the flight deck. I sat down in the jump seat, staring at my frozen watch. 7:14 a.m. I thought of the hotel lobby, of us standing motionless under that red clock, eyes forward, unblinking. What if we never actually left that moment? What if we were still there, looping through the same sliver of time while everything else moved? I tried to shake it off, but the thought wouldn't leave me. I looked around the dim cabin, the rows of sleeping passengers, the flicker of light on their faces, the faint hum beneath the floor, and for a split second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing at the back of the aircraft, not moving. Not part of the crew, just standing there, head tilted slightly, watching us. And the strangest part? The emergency exit light above them was blinking in perfect rhythm with the stopped second hand of my watch. 7:14, 7:14, 7:14, the first officer's voice came over the intercom, low and steady but not calm. "Cabin crew, please secure the galley and remain seated until further notice." The tone wasn't procedural. It was the voice of someone barely holding it together. I unbuckled from the jump seat and looked down the aisle. The passengers were restless, a few looking up as if they'd felt something shift. The seatbelt sign wasn't on, yet everyone seemed frozen in place. Even the air looked still, thicker somehow. I turned to Lena, who sat across from me. She mouthed silently, "Did you feel that?" I nodded. It wasn't turbulence. It was like the entire aircraft had slowed down for a heartbeat, as if the world outside had dragged against us. A sudden metallic pop echoed through the cabin. Not loud, but sharp enough that a few passengers gasped. I rushed toward the source, which came from the aft galley. One of the service trolleys had rolled backward and stopped dead against the wall. It shouldn't have moved at all. The floor was level. The coffee pot inside rattled once, then went completely still. The interphone buzzed again. It was the cockpit. Eric's voice sounded different, strained, hoarse. "Pamela, something's wrong with the horizon indicator. It's spinning, like we're in a bank, but the plane's steady. Johann swears he's keeping her level. What about the clocks? I asked. He hesitated. All frozen. Everyone. Still 7:14. I didn't know what to say. Should I check the passengers? He exhaled slowly. Just keep them calm, and whatever happens, don't open the aft galley door. The call ended before I could ask why. When I turned around, Marisol was standing at the curtain. Pamela, she whispered. Someone's back there. What do you mean? In the service area, I heard movement. A knock. We both stared at the galley door. It was closed, locked, and sealed. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Lena appeared beside us, pale as frost. Is it cargo shift? She asked, but her voice cracked halfway through. The knocking stopped. I wanted to believe it was just air pressure or metal expansion. But then, faintly, we heard a voice. It was distorted, distant, as if carried through layers of static. A whisper pressed against the other side of the door. It said something like, "It's still 7:14. Marisol started crying quietly. I grabbed her hand to steady her. Then the cabin lights dimmed to half power. From the forward galley, a passenger screamed. I ran toward the sound. A woman in row 11 stood pointing at the window. We're not moving, she said. Her voice trembled, eyes wide with terror. I looked out, expecting clouds, horizon, anything. But outside was pure white. Not sky, not fog, just a colorless void. It looked like the world had been erased. Ma'am, please stay seated, I said automatically, though I was trembling myself. She clutched my arm. Where are we? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. The captain's voice came over the PA again, shaky this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We are experiencing a temporary instrument malfunction. He didn't sound like a man who believed his own words. Then, the aircraft lurched. Not violently, just enough to make everything tilt slightly. Left. The white outside shifted, like a ripple spreading across a still pond. The hum of the engines deepened, vibrating in the bones of my teeth. Every clock, every watch, every display screen in the cabin blinked, then reset to 7:14 a.m. The air grew warm. Too warm. I smelled ozone, sharp and metallic, like burnt wiring. Lena stumbled toward me, gripping her wrist again. The circular mark had turned almost black. It's spreading, she said through gritted teeth. The skin around it pulsed faintly, glowing beneath the surface. Sit down, I told her, but my voice didn't sound like mine. The world was muffled, like I was underwater. Then, one by one, the reading lights above the passengers started to flicker, not randomly, but in sequence, row by row, down the entire length of the cabin. It traveled like a wave toward the rear galley, where the door remained sealed. Something inside that galley hit the metal from the other side. Hard. Once. Twice. Johann's voice broke over the intercom, panicked. Eric, we just lost external. Visuals. The radars, and then silence. The intercom went dead. I reached for the handset again, but static burst through it, a jagged hiss that made me flinch. Through the noise, I heard a whisper, my name. Pamela. Long pause. Don't look behind you. My breath caught. I turned slowly toward the aft of the cabin. The aisle lights flickered once more, and in that split second between dark and light, I saw a shape standing by the emergency exit. A person, too tall, head tilted forward, no uniform, no movement. When the light steadied again, it was gone. Passengers started murmuring now, restless and scared. Marisol tried to distract them with water service, but her hands were shaking. So badly she spilled half the bottle. I went back to the galley to check the rear door again, my pulse hammering. That's when I saw the condensation forming on the metal, not from heat, but from breath. Small, circular patches of fog were spreading slowly across the inside surface, as if someone were exhaling against it from the other side. And through that thin layer of frost, something began to trace letters. Crude, trembling, but unmistakable. Stumbled backward, heart racing. The interphone rang again. I snatched it up. "Captain?" No response. Just that same rhythmic static, slow and deliberate, almost matching the pulse in my wrist. I was about to hang up when, clear as a whisper in my ear, I heard, "You didn't leave the hotel." The line went dead. When I looked back at the galley door, the condensation had vanished. But the numbers remained, faintly visible, etched into the metal like frostbite scars. That was the moment I realized we weren't dealing with malfunction, or illusion, or fatigue. Whatever had happened in that Reykjavik hotel, whatever had taken those 3 hours from us, had come back with us on board, and it wasn't done yet. By the time we touched down in London, it was mid-afternoon local time, though none of us trusted clocks anymore. The descent had been quiet, too quiet. No turbulence, no chatter from the cockpit, not even the usual creaks and groans of the fuselage under pressure. Just the sound of breathing and the occasional nervous cough. Passengers disembarked slowly, confused but calm, as if nothing unusual had happened. Some thanked us, smiling faintly, unaware that we were trembling beneath our uniforms. As soon as the last one stepped off, Captain Eric called the crew to stay behind. His face looked hollow, the skin around his eyes gray. "We're going to debrief with operations," he said. "Keep what happened between us until we understand it." His voice cracked on the last word. We followed him out into the jet bridge, where 2 airline officials were already waiting. One of them, a woman in a navy suit, smiled politely. "Captain Eric Lindstrom, you're 3 hours late. Did you have a maintenance delay in Reykjavik?" I remember the look on Eric's face. Total confusion. "Late? Our scheduled departure was 10:30 local time. We left on time." The woman frowned, tapping her tablet. "According to the flight log, Sky Nordic 204 departed Reykjavik at 13:42. We have ground footage confirming it." No one spoke. I felt a cold wave crawl through my chest. My phone still showed photos time-stamped around 7 that morning, frozen just like before. I turned it off. They escorted us to a small conference room near the operations center. The blinds were drawn, the fluorescent lights harsh. A technician entered carrying a hard drive, the aircraft's data download. He plugged it into a laptop, murmuring to the others. The first thing he said out loud was, "The system recorded a complete data gap between 0714 and 10:03 UTC. Eric blinked. "A gap?" "Yes," the tech said. "It's like the plane just wasn't there." Johan ran a hand through his hair. "So what? 3 hours erased themselves?" The technician shrugged. The instruments kept recording. Environmental data, temperature, and altitude, but the time code didn't advance. It's like those 3 hours were overwritten with the same second. I looked around the table. Everyone's face reflected the same disbelief that had started. In Reykjavik. The same creeping dread. Then came the photos. The investigators had pulled stills from the Reykjavik airport cameras, the shuttle arriving at 10:30, not 7:30. There we were, walking into the terminal with our suitcases, moving like we'd done it 100 times. Could we have blacked out? Marisol whispered. All of us? The investigator hesitated. If it were a shared episode, that would be statistically impossible. Lena had been silent the entire time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. It's not impossible. Just not explainable. The investigator looked at her wrist. What happened there? We all turned. The circular mark had darkened into a deep red ring, almost like a healed scar. She quickly pulled her sleeve down. Burn, she muttered. Coffee pot. He didn't push further. When they dismissed us, the hallway outside felt colder. The others left for the crew bus, but I lingered. My legs felt heavy, my heart beat uneven. As I stood by the window, I noticed a reflection in the glass, 5 of us walking toward the exit. But there were 6 shadows. One trailed just slightly, behind the rest. That night, I stayed at the crew hotel near Heathrow. I couldn't sleep. The walls hummed faintly, like distant engines idling. At exactly 7:14 a.m., my phone alarm went off, even though I hadn't set one. The screen flashed once, then went black. I sat up, disoriented, heart racing. The air felt heavy again, like in Reykjavik. I reached for my wristwatch. It was ticking normally. I almost felt relief until I noticed the second hand pause, then snap backward one tick, landing precisely on 7:14 again. A sound came from the hallway outside my room. Soft footsteps. I opened the door. No one there. But as I closed it, I saw something that made my stomach turn. On the inside of the door, where no one could have touched, someone had drawn a small circle in condensation. A perfect ring. I wiped it away with my hand. My fingers came back cold and damp, but when I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I froze. Someone was standing behind me. Not close, just far enough that I couldn't make out the face. I turned around fast, but the room was empty. The next morning, the airline grounded us, pending review. Officially, they cited instrument irregularities. Unofficially, no one wanted to talk about it. Not the company, not the investigators, not even the other crew. Weeks passed, and we all tried to move on. But I kept waking up at 7:14, no matter what time I went to sleep. Sometimes I'd find the TV flickering onto static. Sometimes the bathroom mirror would fog for no reason, a faint circle forming at its center. Lena stopped answering messages. Marisol transferred to short-haul domestic flights. Johan left the airline altogether. As for Eric, he took a medical leave. Nightmares, he said. I thought I could leave it behind, too. But last week, I got a small envelope in my crew mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photo, printed on matte film, slightly grainy. It showed the 5 of us standing in that Reykjavik hotel lobby, exactly as before. Only this time, I could see the reflection in the glass behind us. 6 people, all standing still, all staring straight ahead, and every clock in the frame read 7:14 a.m. A few months later, I finally left the airline. Sleep deprivation, they called it. Residual trauma from flight irregularities. I didn't argue. What could I possibly say? That I'd stopped trusting time? That every digital clock still blinked at me with the same cursed numbers, 7:14, as if mocking the idea of moving forward? I moved to a smaller city, far from airports, but even here, the routine followed me. I'd wake before sunrise, glance at my phone, and there it would be. The same minute, the same stillness in the air. I thought maybe I could outsmart it, set every clock in my apartment ahead by an hour, cover the microwave display, and unplug the bedside alarm. For a while, it helped. Then one morning, my laptop powered itself on. The desktop clock froze at 7:14. My reflection appeared faintly in the black screen, and behind me, that faint circular mark glowed for a second before fading away. I've since tracked down everyone from that layover crew. Only Johan replied. He said he'd been waking up at the same time too, always with the sense that someone was standing in his doorway. His email ended with one line that sent a chill through me. What if we never actually left Reykjavik? I can't shake that thought. I keep wondering if the real version of us, the ones who walked out of that hotel at 7 a.m., are still there somehow, trapped in that missing stretch of time. Maybe we're the shadows now, the ones a security camera can barely catch, the ones that linger behind reflections and fogged glass. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still feel the air of that Icelandic morning, thin, metallic, humming with static. I can hear the faint echo of the shuttle door sliding shut, the synchronized click of 5 watches stopping at once. If time really did stop for us, maybe it's still waiting. Waiting for us to go back. Waiting for us to notice what we missed. During those lost 3 hours, and every day at 7:14 a.m., the world pauses, just for a breath. Long enough to remind me that something out there is still keeping count,